Alright, hi friend. This is my old Tiny Hawk 2 Freestyle. Don't fly it anymore. It broke in too many ways. But I used to have an issue where one of the pins underneath here was just bad. And so it was my video. The video is the yellow line. And so what ends up happening is the video feed goes from your camera into the flight controller through this video in. And then it comes out, and then so the OSD chip, this little caterpillar-looking guy underneath the capacitor, writes the like OSD screen elements, like your voltage or your crosshairs or whatever else, and then it comes out on the other side of the board. It comes out of one of these pads. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so the pad. Let me get something. Sorry, this is kind of makeshift. It's the middle of the workday here. So you've got a couple pads here. One pad here on the outside. Don't remember what that is. But this pad on the inside is your video in. Now, sorry, this thing's all jacked up. It's got hot glue and wires instead of pins. But normally, this is on stilts. This is on like 4 pins. There's a pin 1, 2, 3, 4. And I believe what you get is ground 5 volt. I don't know, maybe a second ground, and your video. So it's the video out of the flight controller and the video in on the VTX. So your camera has a video out. It goes into your circuit board, or into your flight controller's video in. Comes out of your flight controller's video out and goes into your VTX's video in. So what you can do is what you showed was how this is broken off. And so there's little tiny pins and like there's little pads underneath there, and you can try and direct solder to those. The problem is if you screw up and you short them, it's not like they're not made. They're not like nice solder pads, right? They're not easy to work with. So you can take the 5 volt and ground. Basically, just cut this connector off. Take your 5 volt and your ground and find a 5 volt and the ground pad on the board. I believe 2 of these pads are 5 volt. Oh, sorry, you can't see. This is made for wiring up an external receiver. So you've got like S-bus and then 5 volt and ground are these 2. I don't know which is which. You can solder the camera's 5 volt and ground with those pads since they're easy to solder to. And then for your video, you can bypass the flight controller completely and just solder directly to your video in, which I believe is going to be this one here. It's the furthest back. But first you've got to break the connection that already exists. So you're not going to want to remove the pin headers from any of the other ones, but if you take a pair of flush cutters and you cut, there's a pin that goes all the way through here, and if you cut the back half of the pin, then you can desolder the pin. It's hard just to desolder straight up because there's a solder joint on both boards, and you can't really melt both at the same time. So if you cut the pin, then you heat the solder and use some needle nose to pull the pin out of both sides. And then you can take your yellow camera wire and just bypass the entire flight controller and just go right to the VTX, and then you'll be sending your camera feed straight to your goggles. Problem there is you don't have any OSD elements, so like voltage, timers, crosshairs, horizon, whatever else you like, you're gonna have to live without. So totally up to you. If you, I mean, both are a pretty hard solder job. You can try soldering right to the pins underneath, or these like little like underneath here where you were. That might actually, there's a 5 volt in the ground right there. Maybe not. That's buzzer. I think B2 is probably buzzer. I don't know. 5 volt and yeah, or BZ. Yeah, 5 volt and buzzer minus. Yeah. Well, anyway, there's a 5 volt pad you can use, and then you can pop over to whatever ground is over on this receiver pads if you want. Either way, man, it's gonna be tough to solder to the pins underneath here. Like that's. But it's also gonna be hard to depin this back joint here. Sorry, I'm backwards. This back joint without ruining your VTX or your flight controller. So that's up to you what you want to try. But if you fail here, make sure you get all that solder cleaned up because you don't want to have a short there that'll ruin the whole thing. So Man, yeah, that's tough. So if you end up bypassing the flight controller and you lose your OSD, which is what I had to do, your biggest problem is not knowing battery voltage. So you can set up timers on your radio if you'd like. And the timers on the radio will, like, you can set like a 2.5 minute timer and just land after 2.5 minutes because that's safe. Or if you really want, I think this has full telemetry. I could be wrong. You can set up in your radio so that your radio will beep at you if your voltage goes beneath a certain level, or you can make it so that the drone beeps if it goes beneath a certain level, like your little buzzers will go off. That is tough, but that's gonna be your biggest problem: is not murdering all your batteries if you bypass the OSD. The other thing you can do is just buy another flight controller. I know that sucks. Or if you want to try your hand, I've switched over my toothpick over to a TP3. If you're starting over, that might not be the worst idea. Those things are sick. Anyway, good luck, partner.